I just a wee. I'm just hoping I've got this right. I'm just hoping I've got this right. So I'm going to wait for you to come in, and then I'm going to call Graeme. So I am. So hope you're all good. I'm good. Had a good night last night. Behaved myself. Up nice and early this morning, and everything's good. Really good night. Can't say too much, obviously, because it's private. And that was a birthday party, but amazing food and amazing company. So how are we all doing? Is the sound all right, guys? Because I can't put a mic in because I need to hear Graham. It doesn't work. All right, John. Thanks for coming in. My first moderator for the night. Just say hello to each other. Thank you, Foxy lad. Cheers, mate. All right, Neil. Good. Thank you so much. Thanks. Thank you, Brian. All right, Stephen from Tyrone. Tracy Doyle. Denise. Wade. Good to see you, bro. Brian James. Saying hello to each other. Good lads. Les 65. Hi, everyone. Hello, Les. Oh, were you here first, wee bit? I didn't notice. You've probably been sitting there since the live went up. Since I put the schedule up. So we've got 52 in. Just give it another wee minute. So Graham Moore's coming on, guys. He's a he's a guy that does stuff about the Constitution and all that, and a legal sort of legal head, and he looks at the books properly, and you know he knows a lot of stuff. So he does. It's the kind of guy you would want on your side for court cases and stuff, just for like you know for advice and stuff like that. So I think what we're going to be looking at will be the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, and it's the kind of thing I want to bring to the platform. I just want that option on the table. I want people to understand that there's so many things out there, and and we will go on about it, talk about it as we go. But I'm going to introduce you to him, and yeah, get to know him, find out who he is, how long he's been doing this for, and then we'll get into it. So we will. Um, so if Graham wants to hit the link, 59 in, that'll do. Do this. 2 seconds, guys. Okay, guys. So I'm just waiting for him to come in. So I am. All right, John Giles, T Snitches, June, English, Big Bass Boom, Juicy Lucy. Some cracking names, guys. Mr. Russell 01, English Constitutional Party. Hello. Are you winding John Rankin up a wee bit? M&G there. John come home. TP, how you doing? T3, Aaron Brady. MG, get rid of the British Soviet Union. Hillbilly John, good evening, Freedom Dad. Good evening, Hillbilly John. June English, hello. John Capone, is he in the house? Have I missed him? So I did come on a wee bit earlier, so he is expected to come on at 7. 1 minute past, so he should be on any minute, guys. I speak English, not Soviet British. Evening, Stephen Campbell, how you doing? Jay Cahill, one of my good moderators, good friend. How you doing, mate? Emanates. Hey, Marie, how you doing? But no link to get in. I've sent it in the message. Let me see. Can I send that to you here? Try again. Yeah, I've sent it. I've sent it in the message twice, mate. I'll try. What's your X? What's your X handle? And I'll send it to X. So it's in our private messages, mate. I've sent you twice in our private messages. Is that not letting you get in? Yeah, yeah, Neil. This is if we get it sorted, you know. Exit. Okay. Let me have a look at this. Give me 2 seconds, guys. Count. So hopefully you should be able to get in okay. Stevie Mac, hope you're all well, chum. Keep up the good work. Really interesting. Thank you, mate. All right, Jerona. Good to see you, buddy. Just seeing James saying hello to you. Big bass boom. Jeremy Faulkner Court. Hope you're good, Jerona. Hope everything's good down there. Down there in the south. Sheila's dot to dot. Hello all. Hello, Sheila. We're just waiting on Graeme to hit this link. He might be having problems with it. So when I was out last night, somebody recognised me. Oh, here we go. I'll get back to that. Started him. There we go. All right, mate.
Hang on 2 seconds, because
No problem, mate. Take your time. We're just saying hello. Just take your time, bro.
Completely. Hang on a minute. For some strange reason, I'm getting an echo on this.
Does it sound all right? Sounds all right to me. And guys, does it sound all right to use? Can I get some comments?
Let me see if I can find what it is. I don't know what it is. But I mean, I don't normally go live like this on the phone. So I normally do it via Zoom or StreamYard or whatever. Not that it matters that much. It means I have to use their app, and it causes problems. But carry on.
Yeah. Okay, Graeme. So, can you tell my followers and my subs, how long have you been doing what you've been doing? What is it you do? How did you start it? And how long have you been doing it for?
long time, probably about 30 years. The reason I started doing it was because 30 years ago I was set up by the British police and spent a very long time in HMP Hellmarsh as a triple Cat A prisoner, then as a double Cat A prisoner for a very long time, and the whole thing was completely made up. It was a fantasy of the police, but they'd gone so far in bringing it forward, the whole setup, everything, and I ended up obviously. What happened was, instead of me rebelling against the system, even though I was obviously a lot younger, I was getting the law books into my cell. Being held as a Category A prisoner meant that I was on a cell on my own. So the law books come in, people sent me law books. I started off with prison law. And there was lots of things that the prison was doing to prisoners, and especially the Cat A's, that was completely unlawful. And I started to challenge that, spoke to the other prisoners out of the window and said, listen, we was banged up 23 hours. By the way, I was in prison for a non-violent offence and alleged of fraud. And what they actually said was that I had broken 128-bit encryption on a 186 laptop 30 years ago, overnight, by the way. That's the type of genius that I was, even though today you couldn't do it with a supercomputer, right?
Yeah.
But they said I've done it with a 186. If people don't understand the terminology of that, I want you to understand that your mobile phone is probably 1,000 times more powerful, at least now, today, your mobile phone, than what a 186 laptop was 30 years ago. And what they're saying is, with a fraction of your mobile phone power, right, I broke 128-bit banking encryption. And they didn't just say I conspired to do it, they said I actually did it, right? And then they provided evidence which was a complete fallacy. The point being, once I was actually in there and incarcerated and waiting for trial, they used the system to project to the outside, while this person is highly dangerous, right? So instead of taking me to trial at HMP Belmarsh's courtroom, which glass on the dock, right?
They've had Paris trials and all there, so yeah.
It is a mad place. So why did they do that? Because what they wanted to do was for the cameras, for the media, is to create a media spectacle of me being taken to court and others in a secure vehicle, back and front with machine gun police, literally in Range Rovers, and a helicopter, right?
Yeah.
With, again, armed snipers aboard the helicopter. And then when you get to the court, there's snipers on the court, there's armed protection on the jury and armed protection on the judge, right? This is all part of what they did to me, right? And then you've got to think mentally, at 1 hour are they allowed to do this, and 2, how do I get out of this? Like, this is the system, right? This is the British system, right? So again, getting back to the original part of the story, we was being mistreated in the prison, banged up 23.5 hours a day. And if anyone's ever been locked up, being locked in a cell with no exercise 23.5 hours a day isn't a pleasant experience. And there's some people out there will say, so what, you're a criminal. No, this is on remand, right? You're not convicted, and yet they can do all these things to anyone, right?
Yep.
So again, I started to read the law, and then what happened? was I started to get the other Category A prisoners listening to me out of the windows every night. This is what the law says. And they said, just tell us what you want me to do. And I said, in the morning, go down. So there's apps. So you have to ask for permission to do everything in prison, right? So I said, I want all of you, and there was 30 of us on the wing, to go down and ask for an app. And it's called a request and complaint form. So 30 prisoners went down. Don't forget.
Yep, I've filled the few them in, like.
Well, again, don't forget, it's the most. So just to make sure, you're talking about what they describe as the most dangerous prisoners in the country, right?
Yeah.
Or in Europe, all walking down together saying, I want a request and complaint form.
Yeah.
That causes a big issue for them, because once the request and complaint form has got a number on it, right? And it's recorded as being given out in a book. So the Board of Visitors can see 30 prisoners have now asked for a request and complaint form. They've got an issue here.
I've seen that being used. I've seen that being used in prisons I've been in. Exactly what you're saying.
Right. So
that's the one that goes to the PO, the SO, the PO, and they write a reply, and then you put it back out again. Then the governor writes a reply, and then it goes on further into the Home Office.
Right. And once the governor has made his reply, that is the equivalent, because it's the governor, it's the equivalent of the government, right?
Yeah.
So what you do then is you say, I am going to judicial review your decision on keeping us locked up for 23.5 hours a day, right? So this whole situation actually ended up in the High Court. And the High Court said, so the governor was forced to come to the High Court in London, and this is another 2 prisoners who actually brought this because they had the backing of the Guardian. But it was all the same thing. We was all together. And the cut a long story short, the governor got up and said, no, they go out on exercise, they go to the gym, they work, they do all these things. They're just lying to you, right?
Yeah.
So the governor then leaves the court and the judge is talking. And then very cleverly, the Category A prisoner that was actually making the application called his barrister over and said, ask the judge to see my book, right? Because it's called being on the book. When you're a Cat A, everywhere you go, you're escorted by 2 prison officers, right? And a dog, right? So, and that's what I had for years. And what happens is in that book, it's like a passport. Every time you come out of your cell, it's recorded. And what is it for? So the judge said to the prison officer, who doc, as it were, but it wasn't a doc. It was like he was making a civil application, and the judge read the book, read the passport, and then called back. They said, get that governor back in this court, right? So the governor's had to turn his car around, go back up to the High Court, and the judge said to him, you've lied. Because this book that accompanies that prisoner says a completely different story to what you just told me, right? And basically what the judge said, and these were 2 alleged terrorists, we now know, well, I knew at the time that they hadn't done what they said, what the state had said they had done. It was a complete lie. They was fitted up, right? And his name was Joad Butler. The point I'm trying to make to you is this, right? The judge then turned round to the governor and said, you do realise that I have the power to give both of these people in this court today bail because of the conditions you are keeping them in. Do you understand that? And the governor said, yes. He said, well, I would suggest by English law, you treat them with respect, and whatever they're entitled to as a prisoner, they should be getting. Not your arbitrary way of dealing with them in the prison, and these people are not even convicted, right?
Yeah.
What happened after that case and a couple of other bits that we did, they then give us jobs on our own wings. So we could be cleaners, we could be on the servery. So we looked after our own food, in other words.
Yeah.
We had our own laundry, all of the things that help to rehabilitate people, getting them out of their cells and saying, like, if you want to earn £8 a week or whatever it was, get a job as a cleaner and you got £8 a week from the prison. So you're up there with your mops and mopping up. We had the most spotless wing in the whole place, right? So again, all I'm trying to say to you is these Cat A prisoners, highly intelligent people, right, had put up with this treatment for years until someone started to read the law book and say they ain't allowed to do this, right? And that was how it all started. So I then started to read the Constitution. I started reading the Archibalds. I started to read all forms of civil law. And from that position, 30 years ago, I got released from prison. I went and got a job straight away. Within a month, I had a job. Within 18 months, I was on £80,000 a year plus bonuses. I was a systems engineer and a telecoms engineer for one of the largest telecommunication companies in the world. Just happened to be an American company, right? And I was a systems engineer, sales engineer, and a data center expert from everything that I had read and studied, because they wouldn't allow me to do a degree, believe it or not, in prison, because I was too dangerous to have a calculator. They wouldn't even allow me to have a calculator. That's how bad they was. But that's how it started.
So can I just we want to get to the nitty gritty. This is the nitty gritty, so it is. So we've got a problem in Northern Ireland, as you can see, with the start of mass immigration. Basically, what's happening in England and what's happening in Ireland, and we don't know what to do. We don't seem to have. Our politicians are telling us our hands are tied, and we seem to be under the control of Westminster. So as long as we're under the control of Westminster, then they're going to be able to put as many people into this country as they want. So, have you got anything that you can bring to the table to give us Northern Irish and Irish folk options? And I'm going to say Northern Ireland and Republic of Ireland. I need to know if that's possible as well.
So it's 100% possible. So what I do is what's known as the common law constitution, right? So in other words, we have a written constitution. It is a common law constitution. It isn't codified in the same way as America, but our constitution was exported to America. So all of the rights, common law rights that you have, many of them, by the way, have been codified into law, and I've got them behind me at the moment. One of the things that people need to understand is that you have the ultimate right? And it's the option that the people in Northern Ireland are not being told they are being denied it, and they're being denied it in particular by a group of people. I'll describe them as the ruling class or the cabal or whatever you want, right? Some people will just refer to them, as I often do, but can have wrong connotations, as the Brits, right? People must understand that there is a British regime and a ruling class. And those people have conned and removed rights of the Northern Irish, which they are not allowed to do. They've also done it to the English, they've done it to the Scots, they've done it to the Welsh. And there's another group of people that took control of Southern Ireland. And then people are called the Fabian Society. The Fabian Society are British, right? And they are committed Marxists. So Sadiq Khan is an executive member. Keir Starmer is an executive member. Tony Blair is an executive member, or were executive members. They're still part of the system, right? So once you understand that the British Parliament, as in a British political union, right, which only happened since 1707, and later on they did some other things.
2 seconds. So we've got the Bill of Rights goes back to 1688. So how could something so long ago still be in play today? How can we still? Is it still legal? You know,
it's absolutely still legal, and it's one of the oddities of what I'm about to tell you. We have all got the right to keep and bear arms for self-defense, and especially Protestants, but so have Catholics, to be fair. But the Protestant religion is protected by the English Bill of Rights. And there was a number of things. So it's called a trilogy. It wasn't just about the English Bill of Rights. There was something called a Declaration of Reasons, and that is where King Billy explained to people why he was coming. And by the way, he didn't invade; he was invited, right?
Yes.
Yep. The second thing is the Declaration of Rights. The Declaration of Rights is crucially important because it is the original contract, and without that contract, none of the kings that have reigned till today could be king, right? Because of that original contract. That's why it's so important.
So
it's constitutional law.
When we have a king or a queen, they agree to this. Is there something in there where they have to abide by these laws?
Well, it wasn't just that they agreed to it. There were certain phrases, and so the other thing that people need to understand who are watching this, there's two types of parliament. Well, actually, there's three, but I won't go into the third type. There's two types of parliament that you should be aware of, right? One is called a convention parliament. Convention parliament has the highest authority. Twice in English legal history, we have had a full convention parliament. What that means is there is no king, right? So when the king absconded, and there was a legal argument at the time, did he abscond or did he abdicate? And they decided he abdicated, right? So therefore, it was perfectly legal for the people to come together in Parliament, create their own Parliament, which has the people often forget this, right? You was part of that because the Union of the Crowns, which was a common law union, happened in 1603, and everyone virtually was happy with that, apart from when, if you like, the Pope started to interfere and try to control England and Scotland and Ireland because they regard Britannia, right, which was named by the Romans, and Britannia's islands as a province of Rome, right? Whereas we're saying we're not your province, right? Never have been, never will be, right? A bit like the European Union. So getting back to what that initial, so you've got the Declaration of Reasons, which is crucially important. If you read it, right, and you can go and read it, there's a website out there called www.everyright.org. It isn't my website, but the person who wrote it understands. He was one of the originators of a particular group of people called the Magna Carta Society, and they created an Article 61 petition to Her Majesty the Queen in 2012, right? And by the way, it was backed by barristers and it was backed by the Lords. It was backed. Article 61, but lots of people misinterpret what Article 61 is. There's a lot of nonsense out there. What we're telling you is what the actual law is, right? So, getting back to the position, the Declaration of Rights is what's known as a private right, right? So, in other words, you can sue civilly, right? And then you've got something called the Bill of Rights, which is known as public law, right? So it was in effect, if people understand this term, it's belt and braces, right? So you're protected in public law and private law. And then a little bit later on, they created another act which was extending and furthering the liberties and rights of the people, and that was called the Act of Settlement of 1701. So really, there's four true documents. There's others in between doing different things, but they're the main ones, right?
Yep.
What's crucial about this is none of the governance today would be in place without that. And how they tried to impose their will, in other words, to take away them rights again, which had already been confirmed as undoubted rights, which is why in Northern Ireland, you can still apply for a firearm and you can write on the application, it's for self-defense. Because the Northern Irish legal system still accepts that you can have a firearm for self-defence, and that is because the Northern Irish, in particular, kept putting the Bill of Rights, the Bill of Rights, the Bill of Rights, as they should have done, right? So what you've done, which is why I say the Northern Irish are more English than the English, is because you stood up and said, I have a claim of right, and this is my right. This is an undoubted right. It is a God-given right to defend myself and my family, and therefore I want a firearm, right? And they will issue it, as long as there ain't no any other issues in the background, like major felons or anything like that. And you can still apply it, but there's another way of doing it if you have got any felons. So, just to make sure people are clear on this, why does this law still stand, right? So, I'll give you an example of that. People say, and by the way, this is not a green screen behind me. There's the Halsbury Statutes, right? Fourth edition, volume number 10. What you won't be able to see in there, but I'll try and show as clearly as I can. It actually says there, constitutional law. There's the thickness of that book. Anyone who says we ain't got a written constitution, I'll tell them to go and have a look at that, right?
So let me just sorry, mate. So what we need to know before we go any further is what happened, what went wrong. So we know like everything that's in the past with our governments, the Tories, the Labours. We can go back as far as you want with the Gulf War, the weapons of mass destruction, and the mistakes after mistake. And then we see the huge, biggest mistake that we've ever seen that's threatened every one of us is mass immigration. Young, fighting age men coming in their thousands and being put into hotels and put up on pedestals. And dare you question it? Dare you go against it? And you're far right and racist. What's went wrong? Why are we in this? Why is the man who's meant to protect us and protect our future and our children? What's happening?
The simplest answer I can give is to tell you prior to 1707 and 1706, which was basically the creation of a British Parliament or an imperial parliament, right? So I'm not left or right. I'm not interested in communism or fascism. I'm interested in people's rights, and that includes the Irish, the Scots, the Welsh, the English, and the Cornish, right? I'm not interested in anything else. I'm only interested in that. What happened was they overrode the common law union of the crowns, in other words, a brotherhood of nations, which occurred in 1603, right? And what they did was they put a political union. They did some other things in 1911. There's many others. I can go through all the history of it, but to directly answer your question, why is it as bad as it is now, is because Sinn Féin, and I'm talking about what they managed to achieve in a British Parliament. Sinn Féin and the Fabian Society come together because they are acting as one, and they created something called the 1911 Parliament Act. There was big debates at the time saying, don't do this. If you do this, you will create a political class. And that's when they started paying members of Parliament. So instead of you getting a man who'd been in business for 60 years, was very wealthy, and then give his time for the community to be a member of Parliament because he had knowledge of business and knowledge of creating jobs and all of the benefits that his knowledge could give to society. Instead, what you got was a bunch of people then doing a degree in political science and put into the people communist views and ideology, right? And then you had two ideologies that competed with each other. One was called fascism and the other was called communism. And they're the two groups of people, even though everyone denies that is the case, it is actually the case. And the group of people that were subverted from their rights was just normal people like me and you, right? Because we had, under the Constitution and the common law, we had rights, and the state could not breach them rights, even when we couldn't vote. So just to make sure people understand what I'm saying. In 1819, just outside Manchester, a place called Petersfield, there was a demonstration, and the demonstration was working class people for two reasons. The first was because they didn't have a vote and they wanted to vote, and the second was to make a declaration that we're not paying tax. We'd already done it in London, we'd already done it in Birmingham. We took the protests literally to Manchester, and what happened was the British, and I want everyone to be aware of what I'm saying, drew their sabres and attacked an unarmed crowd. They killed 19 men, women, and a baby in arms that they run through with their cutlass, right? That is the British imperial system at play because we asked for the vote, right? Now, I'm not a communist, I'm not a socialist, I'm not a fascist, right? I'm a constitutionalist. The point is they got away with that, and then after that point, they started to chip away at our rights because sometime later, not that much later, they started to extend the franchise to us. But in doing so, they did some things in the background that which they weren't allowed to do. They started repealing certain things and doing things against our common law rights. So how did we get there? We got there initially, but one of the worst enactments was the 1911 Parliament Act, right? Without any doubts whatsoever. It was socialist inspired. If you go back and look, and people need to understand this, they actually created in 1947 and 1981, they erased Irish nationality, they erased nationality and Welsh nationality, and they did it by creating a list with the British nationality in 1981. The last person that did that was a guy called Joseph Stalin, right, who was the commissar of identity in the USSR, and he erased all the identities, right? So the easiest way for you to all understand this is that's listening, when they dissolved the USSR in 1991, they dissolved the nationality of Soviet, right? But they'd already brainwashed over 70 years, you are a Soviet, you are a Soviet, you're not a Russian, you are a Soviet. What have you got back now? You've got the sovereign nation of Russian and a sovereign nationality of Russian, right? And they are true patriots. And not only are they patriots, they are all Soviets slaughtered 70 million Christians. These people, whether you are Catholic, Orthodox Christian, or whether you are Protestant, right? They hate Christians. And they killed 70 million. Everyone talks about the Holocaust, right? The biggest Holocaust was what happened there.
Are we talking about Russia? Or are we talking about the Soviet? Who's Christians?
They're not. So one of the things that Alexander Solzhenitsyn said, right, who wrote the volumes, many volumes on the Soviet Union, he said that he was asked, "What's your biggest bugbear?" He said, "The people that conflate Russian with Soviet. I am a Russian. I am not a Soviet, right? Well, that's the way I am. That's the way the Northern Irish should be. They should be standing up and saying, I am Irish. The fact that you're Northern Irish, you are Irish, right? You are not British. British is a legal fiction created by statute. It is unnatural to human beings, right? And what we've allowed to happen is them to take control. So getting back to, is there anything you can do? So I've sent a proper document. Now, most people listening to this won't understand. It is simple. It has to be written in a specific way. And that is a petition to the Crown. And I've wrote that because it has to include a prayer, right? Mm-hmm. The Crown or the monarch, King Charles III, can only be the king if he adheres to his oath, and he took 2 oaths, right? And they're called, the type of oath he took is called a solemn oath. It's not just an oath to the country, it's an oath which is akin to treason, right?
Yeah.
None of this is fake All of this, I'm telling you, is actually the law. So we wrote out this petition. It's been given to some people in Northern Ireland. Jimmy's one of them. And what it means under the Bill of Rights, I'll just give you an example. It is illegal to arrest you for petitioning the monarch. It is illegal to prosecute you under our constitution. So when I went to Buckingham Palace some years ago, it's all on video, I was petitioning the monarch, right? And the police come along, 30-handed, just to make sure I tell you this story. And they demanded that I move on. And I said, no, I'm petitioning the monarch. So I had an argument with all these police officers, and they arrested me. And they carted me off, and they charged me for whatever silly charge they had. And it went to what's known as Westminster Magistrate Court in front of a judge, a district judge. And he said to me, Mr. Moore, what do you rely on your defence? And I held up a copy of the English Bill of Rights and the Coronation Oath Act. And I said, I am relying on my constitutional right to petition a monarch. Or use his commitments against me for that, are committing an offence, right? The police have committed an offence. So the judge then turns round to the CPS, Crown Prosecution Service, and said, is there any independent camera footage from these 30 police officers? And she stood up and said, no, Your Honour.
No, there never is.
So 30 police officers have all switched their cameras off, allegedly, right? They was all on, by the way, because I looked at them.
Yes, the same with Tommy Robinson when he got sprayed in the eyes at one of the, it was an anti-Semitic rally a couple of years ago, and I think there was about 30 officers around him, and he sprayed him right in the eyes, and no camera footage from it, zero, not one of them.
No, so again, there are laws.
Can I just backtrack a wee bit, because this is important? What you said to quite a lot of people like me and other unionists, when you say we're Irish, you know, a lot of people would argue with that, where I come from, and say, no, we're British, you know, and when you're saying we're not British, can you elaborate on that a wee bit? You've got to understand.
So by calling yourself British, you're aligning yourself with the British nationality that was created by statute by a British political union. The political union is what's causing the problem, and the British Parliament, right? So what I'm saying to you is, you are Irish, right? It's a bit like America. Well, it's not a bit like America, it's exactly the same. America is a model of how England was, right? So England was a confederacy of shires and counties, and they governed themselves, and then they had an English Parliament, which they no longer have, and that English Parliament only really come into effect if there was a conversation by the whole country that had to be had on, and they wanted to make a law.
They're going to war. If we're going to war or something like that, then that's when everybody would be involved.
Yeah, anything that affected the whole nation. So to explain it, like the best way to explain it is in America is the same as England, right? So originally, I'm talking about not the union that they've got now, but the original Constitution of America from 1776 and about independence. They had 13 independent colonies, right? But they wasn't colonies; they were dominions. So England had dominions, the British have colonies, and so a dominion is self-governing, a colony is completely controlled by central parliament, right? That's the difference. So you should have, for example, which is why I say to you, the other option is complete independence, which has never been put on the table for you, and you should understand that self-determination is the #1 human right. Right? So what you do is you put a border up, and you as the Northern Irish say we have a constitution, right? Because you still have our constitution, the English constitution.
If the Americans are still running on theirs, why can't we run on ours? You know what I mean? That's what I'm thinking. How far back does the American Constitution go?
Oh, so the Constitution goes back well before even the Magna Carta. So the Magna Carta is a fraction of our constitutional laws, a very important fraction, but it's still a fraction of it. You have many constitutional laws, but
Yeah.
because Northern Ireland, because Northern Ireland is it's a common law jurisdiction. So Southern Ireland was a common law jurisdiction. It's now paid and enforced, believe it or not, by the European Union. And because the Fabian Society rewrote, this is part of their problem in Southern Ireland. The Fabian Society, or the Marxists, rewrote the Southern Irish Constitution in 1937. And the key parts of that constitution that they changed was, instead of saying that you have individual rights, they say it's about the common good. It sounds good. It's communism, right? And what they actually did was created this situation where they removed from Southern Ireland the English Bill of Rights, the Magna Carta, everything that they relied on, and the communists put in place this structure, which is why they are now being destroyed, right? So when you had this situation with us leaving, I'll give you another example. The Isle of Man. The Isle of Man has an inhabitants of 80,000 people and is independent. It only relies on England, really, and Ireland for its defence. That's it, right? And that means if it was invaded or anything, we come and bail it out because it's strategic and it's sitting like in the St George's Channel. So when people understand that Northern Ireland is far bigger, you got 1.9 million people, right? If the Isle of Man can be completely independent, why can't you? Well, no one's ever told you about why you should be independent, right? And what the benefits are is Stormont has got nothing to do with Southern Ireland, nothing to do with the British, right? Because the way we would do it, you wouldn't have a British Parliament anymore anyway, right? And Northern Ireland would be completely independent, and you would elect your own people that govern your own country, Northern Ireland, right?
So
that
why
doesn't mean. Go on.
why? So why have we got politicians in Northern Ireland that are so hell bent on following the British government, has the establishment that we know, even though they see the damage that they're doing to the British? You know, England, Scotland is parts of it are unrecognizable. So to me, like, that's not the union that I got brought up. That's not the England that I got brought up to love. It's not the London I got brought up to love. And Glasgow is changing, Edinburgh's changing, Aberdeen is changing. So this is not the union that we grew up to love. The union has changed. So what's the problem? Why can't our government just say, listen, we can do this ourselves. We do not need to rely on this traitorous government in Westminster, because that's what they're doing. They're feeling their people, and now they're feeling us.
Those people no longer represent you. They represent lobbyists. They represent pharmaceuticals. They represent the military-industrial complex. They represent everything that you would stand against. And even those in Northern Ireland, there is absolutely no. So for example, we've got two elements, right? So we've got the English Constitution Society. .co.uk, and we've got the English Constitution Party. And what people don't realise is that we have got Scottish members, Irish members, Welsh members, Cornish members, because we even believe if so our principle is self-determination, not because we want to control you, because we want the opposite. We want you to be completely independent and govern your own nation. That means that you turn around to the United Nations and say, listen, we're not taking any of your migrants, and we are building a border between Southern Ireland and Northern Ireland, because they are part of the United Nations and part of the European Union, and flooding their country and obviously killing Ireland, right? The people that have got the most say in making an independent Northern Ireland happen are the Northern Irish people. And so again, people just need to be aware of it. That all I'm doing is telling you there is a big difference between the political union that you refer to as British and the Brotherhood of Nations, which happened in 1603. So if you still wanted a crown, it's entirely up to you, right? If that's what you want to do, if you want a crown and you want someone, you know, whoever he is, Charlie or William or whoever it's going to be, right? Or you could be a republic. Don't forget, England has been technically a republic on a couple of occasions. The major occasion was the interregnum with Cromwell. Well, and the reason was because they was abusing their powers. Well, it's happening again. And it's in the name of the crown that they're doing that. I mean, it is technically the monarch. The Parliament is own. So if you want to make it and bring it back, like we say about police constables are crown servants. They are not public servants. Between the two things. And then when I explain it to people on the cinema, they go, wow, well, why? Even legal professionals say to me, you are right, I can see it, but why was I never taught this in university? Because the universities have been infiltrated by communists and Marxists. And once people understand that, the Fabian Society is British, right?
Yeah.
They took control of Southern Ireland, and their next step is to destroy Northern Ireland. That is exactly what they're going to do. That's why you've started to see these. That's why you're seeing the rapes. That's why you're seeing, and there's lots of things going on that people don't know about, that you're not being told, right? So that's all we're saying to you.
We can't talk. There's a lot of stuff going on. You got to have receipts, and it's, you know, I'm on the ground and got a lot of messages from a lot of people from all over Northern Ireland and Ireland, and there's so much happening. And because there's no crime, they can't find the perpetrator. You know, it just goes on. And I can't talk about it because it's like hearsay. I would need to bring them people on the platform and say what happened. You know what I mean? Yeah.
No, you do. So one of the things that I'm seeing is, you know, like police armored Range Rovers and Land Rovers, just like you used to see on the news, right? There's things I could tell you about what the British have done in Northern Ireland and Southern Ireland from people that actually know what went on, and I'm talking about people who were in the British Army, right? And they realise now that they were conned. So the British Army were conned, right? And the soldiers were conned into what was actually going on. But making sure I'm clear on this, right? So if you have something called a petition of right, and you've also got the right in the English Bill of Rights, which covers Northern Ireland, to petition the monarch. With this petition that's been written out, you could get 100,000 of you on the street. And as long as you've all got a copy of that and you go to a specific place and say, we are petitioning the monarch, the more people that do it, the more they will understand they cannot arrest you for that. Right? Yeah. And then you are then saying in that petition, we want this to stop and we want it to stop now. And if you don't stop it now, you are no longer our monarch. Right? And then you're then pushing your power under the common law and the Constitution at the state, and the Constitution is there. It is inviolable. It is God-given. They can't take it away. There were phrases used. Even A.V. Dicey said this. And funny enough, in a Scottish case, and it was brought up in 1953. It was the Advocate General, I think they call them, or whatever they call them in Scotland, versus, I think it was, and they basically said, there are phrases, and Parliament can't do anything about those laws. if a phrase has been used, for example, in perpetuity, for all time to come, forever, and in the Bill of Rights it says forever 3 times and all time to come once, right? So it's backed up all the way through it to say you can never change this. And remember, the audience must remember this. It came from a convention parliament, and a convention parliament isn't an ordinary parliament, right? It's really important in law. You understand the difference between the 2 types of parliament. Everyone on the channel should have heard everyone talking about the European Convention of Human Rights, right?
Yeah.
Well, the English had a convention parliament which is more powerful than the European Convention of Human Rights.
And did they overrule the Prime Minister?
Yeah.
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 So
100%. People don't realise the power of your own constitution, and especially in Northern Ireland. And you get to keep all of that, right? That's the beauty of being independent. You can tell the British, the Foxtrot Oscar, right?
Yeah.
We are Northern Irish. We are our own country. Let me tell you something. Investment would flood into Northern Ireland, especially from America.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because
definitely.
they absolutely understand what's going on. So, and again, I mean, I've been to Northern Ireland. I absolutely loved it. It reminds me of how England used to be. But they are trying to destroy it, and they will destroy it, and they will destroy it from the south. And it's nothing to do with the south in terms of the people, right?
Yeah,
It's the people above, and what they'll do is get everyone fighting each other again, and that's not what we want. So again, if you go back to the Soviet Union, how did Russia solve the problem? A number of people got together and they dissolved the Soviet Union. With that dissolving, Soviet as a nationality, which is exactly the same as British, right? It was created by statute. It's unnatural. That is then revoked, made void, and you go back to being Northern Irish. That's it. And then you've got your own Parliament, Stormont. You would still use the various ways. You would be looking. You don't have to rewrite a constitution. But if you wanted to rewrite your own constitution, whatever you do, don't do. It must be on individual rights, not on the common good. Section. I mean, if anyone's ever, I'm a constitutionalist, so I read constitutions, but I've read the IRA's Green Book, for example, which is the constitution of the IRA, and in several places it swears allegiance to what they call a social, democratic, socialist nation, right? Yeah. So they're telling you we are communists, right? Mm-hmm. That's where the problem lies, and everyone who understands the real common law understands that communism is not good, and I mean not good for the working person, and nor is fascism, because both, and all they are slightly different things. They're the same thing in terms of control, right? It means the state has all the power and you have none, right? Well, the English have always said, not having it, mate. That ain't the way we operate, right? We're the governors, not you. You serve us, not the other way round, right? And that is where America got it from. So if you look at that, for example, I mean, I got that when I went out to Texas, the Constitution of the United States, and then it actually tells people, well, the Acts of Union was, I can't remember what chapter it is now, or article, I think it's Article 5, it might be Article 4. It says that these rights must be communicated to the people. Well, they removed the communication of your rights in 1971. So, again, people don't realise that the Acts of Union that you refer to as British, right, is actually responsible for taking away every right you ever had. And that's why you've got to push back against it and say, we ain't having it no more. We're Northern Irish. And I'm English. I'm not British. Right? So sometimes I understand, especially because the term was probably misconstructed by Southern Ireland and certain groups of people by referring to Brits. Right? I get that. And I understand that. And that's why I say, what you've got to understand is part of what they were saying was true, but a lot of it was propaganda and communist. But part of what they were saying was true, and that is that there is a ruling class, and that ruling class does not have your interests at heart. They only have their own interests at heart, and that is why you are seeing the rapes, you are seeing your country being ruined, right? And it's because they don't care about you; they're not interested in that.
Well, it seems to be all like it's every time we see this in any country, it seems to be in the most vulnerable areas. But what I want to ask as well, what you touched on there about us being destroyed by the Republic of Ireland, and it's nothing to do with the people of Ireland because I love the people of Ireland, but and we
Yeah,
are all
yeah.
friends. But so, do you think Sinn Féin, or that's what they're actually pushing for to try, because they can't bomb us and shoot us out? Do you think now they're trying to do this with immigration to
Yeah.
push into
Well,
Northern Ireland?
yeah. So
Trade corners and
absolutely, Sinn Féin are aligned with the Fabian Society, which are aligned with global communism, which are so all of the Commonwealth nations. And till recently, and there's actually a book out there called the Fabian Socialist High Road into America. And if people went and read that, they'd go, wow. And again, there's only one person I've ever seen in the current administration mention the Fabians, and that was Eric Trump, who said the Fabians are responsible for what's going on in America now, right?
yeah.
There's other things that people don't realise. President Trump, for example, the first thing he did on his first term was take down, dismantle and destroy what's known as the NAFTA, or the North American Free Trade Agreement, right?
Yeah.
Why did he do that? Because it was a mirror copy of the British Union, except it wasn't Scotland, England and Ireland in that NAFTA agreement. It was Canada, Mexico and America, right?
Yeah.
And that started to destroy America. He could see strategically what they was doing. The way they have destroyed England, Ireland and Scotland, right, is exactly what they're doing in America. They've moved the whole plot over. If you really go into history, I can go all the way through it, and then people go, "Wow, I never knew that." I mean, all this bullshit that I hear out there about concentration camps. The first people to develop concentration camps were the British,
Yeah.
and that was during the Boer War in Africa, where they was trying to hold down the uprising of the free independent nation, which was the Boers. The people that helped them during that Boer War was the Russians, right?
Yeah.
And then the Russians also assisted America, right? Because they started to see what was going on. And then what happened then was the British installed communism in Russia. The British system is all about communism. Believe it or not, that's what it is. People don't even realise that banking, as we know it today, is the highest form of communism, because the banks have control. They subvert your rights and they control you via debt. You are a debt slave, right? And again, Trump's got this bang on. He said, let's go back to the way we was, and the way we wasn't free trade. Let's go back to tariffs, right?
Yeah.
Well, you would do the same thing with Northern Ireland, right? But you would build up your industries and you would specialize in certain things. It could be anything. I don't know what you can specialize in Northern Ireland. It could be shipbuilding, right? And all of a sudden, your people would start to work again. You wouldn't be taxed, because once you've got an industry, right, and you can build up a number of industries in Northern Ireland, once you've got your population working and the money's going in their pocket, they spend it under a free market economy on the best products, on the best services, on the best XYZ, right?
Yeah.
Quite simply, people would flock, and then you would have the choice. You say, well, actually, we do need a skill set, but we need, I don't know, an Englishman with this skill set, right? So all of a sudden you'd allow certain amount of people to come in the country, but as long as they were providing a skill set and they was then training you, right? So there is a benefit to that immigration. No one's denying that. But what they're doing is flooding the country. And one of the reasons they flood the country with immigrants from foreign nations is because them immigrants do not understand that you have constitutional rights and common law rights. That is alien to them. So if they get a population that doesn't understand that they have constitutional rights, imagine me sitting here talking to someone, I don't know, from the Congo, and I say to them, oh, you've got a constitution, you've got this, you've got that. And they go, well, it's nothing to do with me, right?
Yeah.
If once that population builds up,
yeah,
then people start taking liberties. And just to make sure I do say this, because I've mentioned the Congo, I want to make this clear to everyone. The English Constitution does not mention race anywhere. The people who brought race into this equation for dividing, right, with the Race Relations Acts,
yeah,
they were the ones who started to bring these in, and then they started to subvert the constitution against the indigenous population, which is what you're seeing. Just to make sure I'm clear on this, Liberia, and don't forget I'm a constitutionalist, so I read constitutions, right? Liberia has a constitution that's been in place for a very long time, and in its constitution, by the way, anyone who don't know, Liberia is in Africa, right? Its constitution says you cannot be a citizen of Liberia unless you are a Negro, right? So if anyone says to you, you can't be racist, you say, well, what about Liberia? I can't go to Liberia and become a citizen because I'm not a Negro, right? I'm not bitching about their constitution. That is the constitution and the law of their land, and that is what the people decided, right? I haven't got an issue with that. Don't want to be, don't particularly want to be a citizen of Liberia because they've said we don't want that. We want our own kind. That's it. Leave us alone. And that's fair enough. There's other things in history that I could tell you, but the key point of what I'm saying to you is, remember there is a difference between a common law union, right, which is a brotherhood of nations. So we would be the greatest of friends. You share a constitution, you share a history with us that is positive, right?
Ireland, Northern Ireland, Republic of Ireland, Scotland, England, and Wales. That's what you're talking about.
Yeah, you would all be friends. I mean, again, it's not for me to tell the Southern Irish where they went wrong. If I'm not being rude to them, but they've been led like a bull with a ring nose into something, and now they can see what is going on, right? The point is, they have a reset position, the same as you do, the same as England does, and that reset is the Glorious Revolution, the trilogy. And all you've got to do is say, end the union, void the Acts of Union, we will go back to being independent nations, exactly the same as the Isle of Man. And just to make sure you're clear on this, right? That means, not that I've got a yacht, but if I did have a yacht, I could sail out of port, come over to Northern Ireland, and you would say, Graeme, you got your passport? And I'd go, yeah, there it is, an English passport. You would say, fair enough, you can stay here, and you could have one of the best marinas in Bangor the world has ever seen. And you'll have all these yachts turning up there because you control Northern Ireland. Currently, that don't exist. Currently, there is.
I'm going to just jump in here just to give people an understanding of where we're coming from, because this is a lot for a lot of people to take in, especially coming away from the union and all the rest of it. So basically, if we governed ourselves, each and every one of us, they wouldn't, like, at the minute I believe that we're dealing with something right now on the shores of the mainland that is worse than when we went to war with the Germans. Now, all right, the Germans blitzed parts of London and England and Scotland, right, with bombs, but the effect of the children, hundreds of thousands of children, the violence, the machete attacks, the robberies, the acid attacks. I think this was more horrific because it's happening to the people. The bombs were dropped. There wasn't, there was people died, but this is on a different scale. We also have chemtrails, but they're spraying stuff in the skies. We haven't.
Yeah.
Nobody's got to say it, but on top of all that, we've also spent billions and billions given to Ukraine in a war that was always going to end the same way, right from the start.
No,
And
I
the whole,
agree.
the whole propaganda behind that was, oh, Ukraine are doing really well. Ukraine will do this, and we just keep needing to give them more money and more guns and more weapons and all the rest of it. So we would be in a situation where we would be asked, we would have a referendum whether we wanted our billions to go to Ukraine, whether we wanted them to spray stuff in the sky, or whether we wanted mass immigration where hundreds of thousands of our children were being raped. That's what we're talking about here. We're talking about the 5G, we're talking about the 15-minute cities. We're
So,
taking control of our own areas.
so you can decide to have referendums, but what I'm saying is, as an independent nation, you would take responsibility and you would make sure that you are electing people that represent your views in that parliament. So the objective of a member of parliament is not to represent a political party, is not to represent lobbyists. It is to air the views of their constituent, air the grievances of their constituents in parliament. You can clearly see that that is not happening, right? So what you've just said there is right, but you would have a double safe on that.
He's froze, guys. You're froze, mate. So just until he comes back, guys, this isn't stuff that I'm pushing for. This is just an option. We need to know what's going on. If it gets any worse, we see what's happening in England with I'm not going to go on about it. It's horrific what's happening in England, And once Graeme comes back, I'm going to ask him, is it reversible? That's important, because if it isn't reversible in England, it won't be reversible in Northern Ireland or Ireland, Nobody's agreed to this influx of mass immigration and the push of Islam. Nobody was asked about whether the king should have invited Muslims into the Windsor Castle for Eid. Nobody agreed of the decorations going up all over London for Ramadan. There's a big influx. There's a big push for Islam. I'm sorry, guys, I've lost them. But this is what we're talking about. We're not talking about changing, and we're talking about options. We're talking, letting our politicians know that we have got options. You don't need to sit there and take all this. We don't want stuff being sprayed in our skies. Nobody wants that. We don't know what it is. It's very suspicious. You know what I mean? It can't be good for anybody. We don't want billions and billions getting sent into a hopeless war that was only going to end up one way, and that was with Russia getting the Donbass. There was no two ways about it. Everybody knew that from the start. All we got told lies, and we were bullshitted to by all our governments. And then obviously the big one is nobody agreed to mass immigration. Nobody in Luton agreed to mass immigration. Nobody in any of the cities, Rotherham, Rochdale, Oxford, wherever, nobody agreed to that. That's been forced on the people. Men, fathers and mothers, children have been raped brutally by these men that's came into our country, right? England, Ireland, and Northern Ireland, and Wales, and Scotland, right? There's no two ways about it. The evidence is there. There's an inquiry going to go on. You're going to find out the details of what's really happened to these women, these children. You're going to find all that out pretty soon, and it's horrific on another level. This is what people don't understand. This is another level of abuse to our children that we've ever come across in our lives, And the point is, nobody, us, the people, the citizens of Northern Ireland, England, Scotland, and Wales, and Southern Ireland, don't agree with this. Not one of us agree with it. You've got a small group of far left retards that want to. Refugees are welcome here, but they don't want to bring them into their houses. They don't want them in their areas. The middle class, when they go to all these protests and shout refugees are welcome here, yeah, they're quite happy firing them into our areas and letting our kids suffer. That's the truth. They don't care. Luton, all these places in Glasgow and Edinburgh and Aberdeen, Northern Ireland, they don't as long as it's in the rundown areas, as long as it's in the working class areas, as long as it's not their kids being affected. But the thing is, but it'll be too late by then. But this is the kicker, it will go into their areas eventually. It's only a matter of time before it expands, as we've seen the way it's working with London, Birmingham, Luton. All these, we can see how it works. They start in the city, around the city. They get houses and flats that none of us could afford. You can't. There's no city in the world that's got cheap rentals. No city in the world. Belfast City, London City, Glasgow, Edinburgh. No, we can't afford to live here. But people coming straight into this country illegally go through the hotels and then end up in council houses. You know. So this is what it's about, guys. We don't agree with none of it. Nobody agrees with it. We don't have a say in the matter, and that has to change. We are the people. We are the people who are suffering, not these politicians that live in the sleeps in Hollywood and Malone and all that. You know what I mean? They're not suffering. They come in here every now and again when people come out on the street and they go, "Oh, well, we're here for you" and all that. But when you ask them the nitty gritty, they're like, "Our hands are tied." Our hands are tied. And all I keep saying is untie your hands. Find a way to untie your hands. Find a way to look after your people. Find a way to look after your country. Find a way to build a future for my wee daughter so she's going to be safe in Northern Ireland. Because she wouldn't be safe in Rotherham, Rochdale, any of them countries, any of them cities and towns in England that have been totally replaced. Totally replaced. Where British people are out of there and there's now foreign nationalists in there, whether first, second generation citizenship, whatever, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Albanians, Somalians, Eritreans, doesn't make a difference. They all get thrown a passport once they're here for so long, and then they become British, but they don't hold British values. They don't respect the British culture. They expect us to change for their way. They want to bring their traditions and their cultures to our country. And we're a Christian country. And we find that hard to accept. Like underage marriages, cousin marriages, the whole thing about halal, the way they slaughter animals, noise blasting out 5 times a day or whatever for they call the poor, you know what I mean? And then the two tier of how the police and the government do nothing. They let them get away. The Muslim Defence League were able to walk about England, walking by the police, masked up and tooled up, and nothing done to them. Nothing done to them. We've got the two Manchester, they're just coming up in trial now. How long's that been? What I mean? We've got Lucy Conley and we've got Wayne O'Rourke still in prison. But yet we've got people like Kneecap shouting about um, Israel, Palestine, how great Palestine is from the river to the sea, and telling people to end the lives of politicians. And yet, well, nothing. But if it was the other way around, we'd be sitting in jail for 3 years or 4 years for that, because that's a lot worse. What they're saying on them stages, on them platforms, it's getting shared all around the world, is a lot worse. Are we back? No, it's not letting me come on. It's not letting me add him. It's not letting me add you, mate, for some reason. Sorry, mate, it's not letting me add. I don't know what's happened. So yeah, can't get Graeme back on. I don't know what's happening. But right, I'm gonna have to deny because it's over my comments, mate. That's it away now. Okay, no problem, mate. It's just it's not letting me add you. But yeah, it's concerning as a father. And it's, if it wasn't for what I've seen the last 20 years and how things went in England, still trying to add, man. No, it won't let me add you, mate. It's not adding for some reason. And it's like, I don't understand what it is, guys. You know what I mean? How can our politics? Why is Freedom Dad here sitting really, really worried about the future of our country and the future of Ireland and the damage it can do to us because of the open border? Why is Freedom Dad so worried about that, but yet our politicians are sitting wringing their hands, going, our hands are tied? It doesn't make any sense. It's like, you know, can you not see what's going on here, guys? You know what I mean? I'm in chat. Cheers, mate. See, I've got. Let's see, give me 2 seconds, guys. What's up? Okay, guys, I've sent them an hour link, so hopefully you'll be able to come on. But yeah, it doesn't make any sense to me, you know. And the thing about what Graeme's saying as well, I'm going to let you sort of get an understanding of it. So basically, the Union Jack and the British Union, even though it sounds like it's bringing everybody together, you know, it actually took away all our rights as individuals. That's what he's getting at here. The Union Jack, as we see it, has I've always loved it. I've got 2 Union Jacks on my arm, and I've got a Union Jack on my back. Okay, so I am a unionist. But what as we move forward, like I say, as I look at the union, what's going on, how they're treating their people, how the parliament don't seem to represent the people at all. They're not listening to the people. They don't care how many children get affected by these men. And that's the biggest crime. I've always said this in my platform. That's huge. Them men in parliament knew exactly what these men were capable of doing from 20 years ago. And they sat there and done nothing while hundreds and thousands of children were being raped, brutally raped, and they done nothing. That's the crime. These men in Parliament let these men attack our children on the streets of England, up and down the breadth of it, 45 grooming gangs, hundreds, and I mean, they're saying there's 800,000 children affected because of what our government's done. You know what I mean? So these are crimes against the people. There's no two ways about it. This is a traitorous government who is replacing the population of foreigners, predominantly Islam. And while they're doing that, they're telling us that Islam is the religion of peace. And if you criticize it, you can go to prison by bringing in Islamophobia laws. Now, this is the religion of peace who's raping all our children. Right? You got to understand that. Branding our girls with the letter M and God knows what else, because I can't say too much, to give you too much like that. But a lot of you know what happened. A lot of you know the kind of things that were done to these girls. You know what I mean? And the British government knew this. And then the British government didn't want to have an inquiry. The Labour Party, oh no inquiry, because they didn't want the truth to come out, because it would prove that they were a traitorous government. It would prove that they're not representing the people of England, Scotland, Northern Ireland, or Wales. So how far do we go like this? How long do we let the government keep treating us the way we are? Keep letting our children be abused. Keep letting them spray stuff in the skies without asking anybody. You know, our children, our old people are all breathing this stuff in. They're wanting to block out the sun. What's all that about? Wanting to block out the sun. Stop the sun hitting the ground. You know what I mean? It's nuts. It's nuts. You know, there's no proof of anything like that, the net zero and the ozone layer and everything else. What we've seen with time, that it goes up and down. We get warm, we get cold, we get warm, we get cold. And we're just going through one of them phases, you know? And I'm not a scientist, you know, at the end of the day, but, you know, it's common sense. It's common sense. There's research that's been done. The facts are there. You can look into it, you know? There's videos online that you can look at it, explain it to you a lot better. Going to look at your comments, guys. Jay Cahill, keep that hate going, Malachi. It will get you nowhere. Yeah, hate's going to get you nowhere. When we're dealing with this kind of thing. You know what I mean? We need to all be sensible. We need to understand that everybody's got an opinion. I've got an opinion. That's all it is. You know, I am a unionist. I am proud to be British, but I'm not happy. Something needs to change. Either we need to get rid of the establishment, the private school boys, the millionaires who are destroying our countries, or we need to go independent and we need to govern ourselves. You know, and I don't know what that looks like. I don't even know how we even go there, how we even get down that road. You know what I mean? It's a very dangerous thing to talk about. When you live in Northern Ireland with Union Jacks in every lamppost, it's very dangerous to be talking about breaking up from the Union. You know, but eventually, one day, we will do it. I know that. I can see where England's going. I can see what direction they're going in with Islam. You know, 2,000 mosques in England. You know, to be honest with you, I don't want one single mosque in my country. My country is Christian. We have Methodist, Presbyterian, Church of Scotland, Church of England, and Roman Catholic chapels. Okay, that's what we know. You know what I mean? That's our religion. You know, and I'm not being funny or nothing like that, but I don't believe Islam is a religion of peace. The evidence that I've got looking back in time, right from yesterday, right back to 100 years ago, there's not any evidence that says to me that Islam is the religion of peace. And I have really, really looked. Islam and terrorists in the name of Islam have committed over 25,000 terrorist attacks in 1 year around the world. We've got Boko Haram, we've got ISIS, we've got Al Qaeda, we've got the Taliban, and more, you know, and more. The only paramilitaries that we've ever had in Christianity was the Republicans and the Loyalists, you know, and that was a small space in time. This has been going on for 100 years. It's kind of carry on, you know. So it doesn't make any sense when you're bringing so many dangerous men into the country and then under the guise that they're the most peaceful people you'll ever meet. Yeah, and I'm not saying there isn't peaceful Muslims. Of course there is, but the extremism in Islam is too extreme for our countries. It's too extreme for us. You know what I mean? And we don't want it. And that's me, my personal view, my opinion, entertainment, next educational purposes only. But it's also the opinions of everybody I speak to. Everybody I speak to are all on the same page. We don't want it here. We don't want 1,000 mosques in Northern Ireland. We don't want any of our children being harmed by grooming gangs. We don't want any two-tier where we can't criticise Islam or we can't call out people who are doing horrific things in our community. We don't want that. None of us want that. And the DUP, all our political representatives need to get that into their heads. You know, the people do not want it. So you need to stop it. It's your job to stop this. It's your job to protect us. It's your job to protect my child. It's your job to protect all our children going forward, great grandchildren. That's what your job is right now, you know, because you need to step up now. This is time to step up and do what you've been voted in to do, and that's to protect the people of Northern Ireland. And you're not going to do that by taking the wages from Westminster because they're destroying our country. And you're going to see that as we go forward. You're going to see people coming from Ireland because Ireland's going to get fuller and fuller and fuller, you know, and they're going to be coming up as well. They're going to be pushing people out of that country. You know what I mean? Eventually people will not want to stay in Ireland from foreign lands. No two ways about it. You're going to have Ballymeenas all over Ireland one day. No doubt about it. So where do you think they're going to go? You know, it's on levels. It's understand. Nobody can understand it. You know what I mean? Nobody can understand why you would do this. You know, and we need to ask ourselves who's doing it. So we've got the EU who's doing it there, and you know who's responsible in Britain? The establishment, the people, the schoolboys, the private schoolboys, and the millionaires who somehow have got in the power. You know, Labour got voted in with 20% of the vote. 20% of the vote. That's how Labour got voted in. You know, I think it was 40 or 50% didn't vote at all. And then you break down all the other bits. You've got, you know, Reform, UKIP, and all the rest. You know, the Greens and that. So that shows you how easy it is for these guys to get in the power. 20% of the population voted Labour in, and look at the damage that they're doing. Look at the people that they've got in jail. This is who you voted in. They're locking people up for freedom of speech, but yet letting rappers like Kneecap go on stage and say 100 times worse, threatening to kill politicians, pushing a political agenda that's creating division in Northern Ireland by shaying Brits out, wanting me out of my country, and also shouting from the river to the sea and supporting Palestine and celebrating in the deaths of IDF or the hatred of Israel. So I'm not here nor there with Israel and Palestine, but all I'm saying is this is a huge two-tier here, and for some reason our government are protecting anything to do with Islam or Muslims, because this is what Kneecap's about. They support Muslims. They want more Muslims and more people from Islam into West Belfast, in all these areas. They want Ireland flooded with Islam. The Palestinians, they would take the million that's there and bring them straight into Ireland. Or they would take the million that there and bring them straight into Northern Ireland without a care in the world. Without a care in the world. They don't care about the damage that these people would do to our children. Okay, they don't care. That's how much these so-called Irishmen or Irish boys, we should call them, care about your country when they're behaving like that. All because the Palestinians supplied the IRA with Semtex, rocket launchers, guns and bullets, and trained them in Palestine. And this is where the rhetoric's coming from, this Kneecap, all back to the IRA and the support that the IRA got from the PLO. And the only reason the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, supported the IRA in the first place because they were against the British. Just like we've seen in the past when the Germans and right back to the Spanish, there's always been anybody that was against the Irish, the British, they would be infiltrated and used by other people like Libya. Gaddafi supplied the IRA. And it wasn't like support for the IRA, it was just that they were attacking the British. You know what I mean? And that's where we're at today. So there's lots that we got to take in, guys, that are quite serious for the future. That's what I think. You know what I mean? I'm not going to be here for long. None of you are going to be, us Generation X aren't going to be here for long, guys. And I just want to do everything I possibly can to try and help the people of my country and the people of Ireland and the people of England, Scotland, and Wales. But I honestly think we're past that. I would like to have asked Graeme, does he think is it reversible? Is what's happening in England reversible? Because the only way to stop what's coming is by reversing it. There's not that's I think everybody with any sense knows that. So a lot of comments coming in, guys. Check out the three most popular petitions on the UK governmental parliament petition page with the word hotels. The orange and Irish flag is Freemason ruling over us. Thank you. Who was that? Sorry, shout your name. Sheila, thank you. 10 years too late. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking it's too late for England. And then as we're going to go forward, we're going to see this. Our kids are going to see what comes and what happens in England. How quickly it spreads out, how much the population grows amongst the foreigners compared to the British citizens, because of everything that the British government have done to keep us down, to keep us having children. There's no two ways about it. The laws that have been brought out to keep us from having children, the price of living, people can't afford to have children. Like I say, we're paying the most for gas and electricity around the world. Why is that? The two-cap system where they capped the two-child, you couldn't have any more than two children. So it's all been, I think, done on purpose. At the same time that they've been taking down our birth rate, they're bringing in these people whose birth rates are going up. So there's only one conclusion, that you don't need to be a rocket science to work it out. It doesn't matter. You mightn't be able to get the time right, how long it's going to take for a complete change, but it's going to happen. You can say it's definitely going to happen. So whether it's 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, or 100 years, England will be an Islamic country. And like they've been telling us, the ISIS flag will fly over Buckingham Palace. The ISIS flag will fly over Downing Street. They've been telling us this for years, that this is what they plan to do, to take over Western society. And that's what they've done with France, Belgium, Germany, and now we're getting it in England and Scotland. and Wales. And we're holding off in Northern Ireland the best we can. But it's coming. We can see it's coming, you know. For the first time in Northern Ireland, we have crimes against our kids that we haven't seen before, you know. It's not that we haven't seen before, it's just the manner of them and quick, how these men are just coming in. They can't speak English. They had to get a translator for one of the guys in court, you know. So, what, you know, you see how quick, boom, they're here, bang, kids are getting attacked, you know. And that's the way it's going to be. That's the way it's going to be because there's no respect for our culture. There's no respect for our kids. They, as far as they're concerned, if they get caught, what are they going to do? You get 3, 4, 5 years in a cushy jail with PlayStations, Xboxes, shower in the cell, toilet in the cell, the gym, good food, a roof over your head, and heating. That's their punishment. That's why they do it because they're coming from countries where they're sitting in a cell with no mattresses, where there's rats and cockroaches. You understand? That's why they're coming here because they can't do what they want in their own countries because it's too extreme. Because they don't mess about in these countries. They do not mess about. Britain is a soft touch. They'll take the 3 or 4 years or the 2 years we hand out because they know they'll get a wee house and a wee council house after it. Because you can't get released in the prison out of prison straight onto the streets. Once you go into prison, they've got to find you accommodation for getting out. You understand? So it's a win-win for them. It's a win-win for them. There's no you know, there's no deterrent for them. There's nothing I can see that's ever going to change these people or turn, you know, get these people to accept that, you know, the hatred towards Christians, you know, the words that was used to the children that were in the grooming gangs, you know, was clear racial hatred towards Christians. When you read the transcripts and you read the testimonies from these girls and you hear what these men were saying to these girls and the way they treated these girls is on another other level of hatred, you know. Torture. These girls were tortured. These men came into our country and tortured our girls, and our government were arresting people like Tommy Robinson for trying to report on it outside the courts. Our government stopped any national inquiries so none of us could find out what truly happened to these girls. How long are we going to go, Northern Ireland, before we realise that this government does not represent anybody, whether on the mainland or whether in Northern Ireland? They do not represent us. They represent Islam. Our king represents Islam. They are pushing for an Islamic state. They are welcoming Islam into the country still, even though they still see the horrific crimes that these men are committing to our children. What does that tell you? How many of our children were abused in England or Scotland or anywhere when we were at war with the Germans? That's the kind of things you need to ask. How many citizens have been attacked, unalived, hit with acid, machetes, or other horrific crimes that we've seen in London with a girl that fell asleep on the bench? She was drunk and the guy can't even say it. Can't even say it because it's that fucking horrific. You know, that's another level of like what? How the fuck can a man do that? That's just, I've never heard of a man unaliving somebody the way he did to that girl laying on that bench in London. Never heard of it. Horrific. And there's just one horrific crime after another. So how many horrific crimes are our politicians going to take and see while they still sit there wringing their hands going, our hands are tied? You know, how many children in Northern Ireland are going to be raped and abused before our politicians say, we've got to untie our hands. We need to do something here. We are Northern Ireland. We are Ulster men and women, and we can govern ourselves. There's no two ways about it. All our politicians that are in right now can step away from Westminster and become one independent Northern Ireland and govern ourselves and protect ourselves and create our own laws where we protect our borders. There's nothing stopping them. Somebody just needs to step up. They need to start having the conversation, you know. That's all I'm asking. Have it on the table. Have it out, you know. Even let me interview one of these and you can tell me why it's not a good idea. Tell everybody in Northern Ireland why it's not a good idea. Why we should stay with the establishment of England and the government of England. I want one of you to come on and tell me why it's such a good idea that we do this. Tell us, the people that are on the ground in the working class areas, not the ones that are getting any money from anywhere to keep whatever's going. The people who are suffering in the working class areas, why don't you come on and speak to one of us, any one of the platform guys, YouTubers, TikTokers, and explain to us why you think it's so important that we still remain part of the union. And I guarantee none of you will take me up on that. None of you will. Because as far as I can see, the only thing that you're getting out of it is money. Money, 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 money. And you don't care about us, I'm not going to go on, guys. I'm going to read some of your comments. Let me know what you think. Just let me know what you think. I need some feedback. Like, the state should pay for trauma therapy for the rest. The state should pay for. The police didn't even go out to them girls in Ballymena. They don't even have an liaison officer. From the last I checked, they didn't even have a liaison officer. All our government did was threaten to arrest the kid for taking her family to the house where she was abused. And then nothing. No support whatsoever. We're trying to get something going so we can get these girls on holiday. Get it out of their heads, get them away, change scenery or whatever. The people of Ballymena are working to do this, not the government. The government aren't interested in the victims. Nobody's interested in the victims. Oh, you can't. Oh, no. In England, some of them were saying, oh, the girls were asking for it. Children were asking for it. Children were coming back and back and back because they were getting addicted to drugs. But the government didn't want to say that bit. They didn't want to say that bit. Whenever the police were going to get these girls, the girls were going, no, drunk, out of their nuts. No, I don't want to go. I'm happy here because they're getting drugs and they're getting drink. But nobody wants to talk about that bit. All they're saying is, oh, the girls were asking for it. They didn't want to leave. We went to try and get them out. And you've left these children with these men. You let children drive away in cars with these men. That's what the police done in England. So if you think the police in England are doing that and it's not going to happen here, you need to catch yourself on. You need to catch yourself on. They're terrified of Islam. They're terrified of these men. They're terrified of offending them. Sorry, Andy. Independent Ulster has been an idea that's never been explored. Maybe you're right, Freedom Dad. It may be time to look at it. Can't be any worse than being controlled by a Labour government. 110%. I'm not. All we want to do is talk about it. Show us that it's not going to work. Explain to us why. Without the romanticism of Ulster says no, and Ulster's British and all the rest of it. Without all that I want the logical reality of what you're thinking that makes everything okay for us to be government by a Labour Party or by any party now that goes in there. Because anybody goes into Parliament now, whoever the next Prime Minister, which will be reform, will not be any different than Labour. Because they wouldn't be Nigel Farage would not be on GB News with his own slot, on mainstream media. The leader of a political party with his own slot on GB News, a mainstream news broadcaster. Do you honestly think the establishment would let that man have that privilege if they didn't want him in power? Whoever's being shut down and silenced, like Tommy Robinson and all the rest, UKIP, Rupert Lowe, Ben Habib, they're not on any mainstream platforms. They're not getting brought up in the news. Tommy Robinson can't get on any platform in mainstream, but yet Nigel Farage has been lifted right up on the pedestal because he's your next Prime Minister. He's the next man. He's their next man. Labour was their last man. Sunak was their man before that. And now Farage is their man. And then after Farage, it'll be Zia Yusuf Mohammed, whatever his name is. Zia Mohammed. He will be your next Prime Minister. Just like Hamza Yusuf was the first Prime Minister, the First Minister of Scotland. And just has, they're trying to set up Mahood, or not Mahood, Sarwar as the Labour leader in Scotland. So you can see what's going on. It's there for you to see. You see how these people behave when they get in the power. So they don't represent us. They don't represent the Christian beliefs of our country. So yeah, Andy, thanks for that, Andy Baxter. Watching you from Dublin, Ireland, and we must stick together. I think it's the only way. Not the only one that thinks this is dumb. And this is another thing, they are politicians as well. Can you not see what's going on? And look how many Irish people are, speaking the Freedom Dad, how many Irish people are giving us love in Northern Ireland? This is unheard of. Can you not see something big's happening? Or you've got your hands over your ears and your hands over your eyes and your hands over your mouth? That's the only thing it can be, because everybody else can see it. Everybody else is great. It's quite remarkable that we've got Republicans in Ireland and Northern Irish people coming together and speaking and being friends and trying to work out what the fuck do we do here. They're in trouble in Ireland. They're in big trouble. That's why they're looking at this is what's going on. They've got nowhere else to turn. They've got nowhere else to turn. And we should be there, open arms, to help these men and women, because doing this right now could set up a lot more progressive and positive ways forward for both countries, Northern Ireland and Ireland, going forward, where we're never ever going to be enemies. We'll always be friends, and we'll never want to take anything off each other. I think they would just be happy that we fucking get rid of the union. They really would. They would. That would be enough. They'd be quite happy with an independent Ulster. There wouldn't be that fight to take our lands off us after us lifting our heads above the parapet and going, "We're here for you." you know. And I don't understand why any man isn't taking advantage of that. The only people that don't want to take advantage of that are people they're full of hate and just want this division to keep going on. And they don't care if they destroy Northern Ireland. And as long as they stay with the Union and have nothing to do with the Republic of Ireland, they don't care what happens to the lands or what future is for my children. And that's what's clear to me. Because I'm just a normal guy with no education, never been to private school, but in nothing. Just me, my heart, my voice, and my soul, and my pride. That's it. And I can see clearly what's going on. So why can't the politicians of Northern Ireland? No rats. Tommy Robinson was jailed for telling the public about the evil happening of the young girls. Yes, mate. Scottish, I love Scotland. I hate what's happening to our countries. There's not any. You could go on my platform, and I could get people from Scotland, England, Ireland, and they will tell you the horrors of what they're dealing with right now. All I say to you is go to these places. Go to Glasgow. Go for a walk around Glasgow and speak to locals. Go into the working class areas and speak to locals. Go into England, go into the Midlands and speak to people. It's all there. There's nobody going to say, "Oh, this is great." You're not going to get anybody in the working class areas who are going, "Oh, we love diversity. Diversity is this word like great." Oh, bring more and more in. You know what I mean? Yeah, we want more. We want more mosques. You're going to get nobody saying that. Nobody. These are the people of these countries. These are people whose grannies, granddads, great grannies, and great granddads who built the foundations, paid their taxes to build a freedom where their people could buy houses, their children could buy houses, they could afford to go out, they could afford to go on holiday, they could afford to eat good food and put good clothes on their children. That's what our grandchildren, our great great grandchildren, our great great grandmothers and grandfathers did for us. And now it's being everything that they put into our country is now being taken out. You understand? So it's a crime. 110% this is a crime. 110% the government in charge are behaving in a traitorous manner. They're committing treason. There's no two ways about it. When you replace your own people and bring foreigners in and people from Islamic countries that do not intend to interact or join in anything that we want to do, and they want to get rid of our Christianity, our churches, they want to get rid of our nativity plays, they want to get rid of our Easter. You can't even get an Easter on an Easter egg anymore. You're not allowed to say Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. What? The only country in the world to put up decorations for Ramadan was England. Don't tell me your country isn't being Islamified. We can see it's what's happening. It's clear. There's towns unrecognizable. I've seen the videos, hundreds of videos where guys are walking about and people they put up India or Pakistan, and you're watching it, and it looks like India and Pakistan. And then it tells you it's Bradford. This is Luton. You know what I mean? This is Oldham. This is Rotherham. This is Rochdale. This is Wrexham. So the evidence is all there. Nobody got asked for this. Nobody asked for all these billions to be spent on foreigners, on hotels, on translators, on phones, on clothes, or RNLI going out and bring them in, or Royal Navy going out and bring them in. All sorts of loopholes through work visas where you got kebab shops bringing in hundreds of people in one kebab shop, all through working visas. And then we got the student visas. And then we got all sorts of other things and loopholes where they can just come right into the country and plant their horses here and not move and never be removed and stay here and get every benefit that our forefathers fought for. They make sure that we were all right. They are now using that and taking advantage of that, whether it's PIP, adult disability, or just normal social benefits, universal credit. They're milking the system dry. The government know that. You know, the reason why they came down on the adult disability and the PIP was because the foreigners were taking advantage of it. You know, and they knew that. And what was Labour's answer? They come down on our most disabled. You know, that's their answer. They come down on people with mental health. You know, they make it harder for people that really do suffer with mental health. So you can't go out. Don't like being around people. Don't like going in the shops. Don't like being in queues. They live a life solitary, just on their own, never going out because of mental health. And now today, anybody applying for that won't get it because of the foreigners who came into the country and abused the system. Our people are suffering. And that's going to go on and on and on with every social policy and everything. You know, when something goes wrong, they're going to crack down on us all. And it's not our fault. Yes, we've had benefits cheats. Of course we have. But this is on a different level. This is on a different level, guys. Strength supported Sinn Féin RA calls the man who stood up in Ballymena racist. Yes, mate, you're right. There was common law many years ago, guys, and this is what he is trying to bring back to America. Truth Crusader, reform equals conform. Nigel as a rat says, strength supporter, yep. R32, you can identify as British and be respected under the safety of an unwrecked. James, you're definitely not. No, you're talking to John. Nigel for Prime Minister. Darn. I take it you're being sarcastic, you know? This is the man who says he can't deport. This is the man who says we got to take Islam with us, and if we don't, we're in trouble. Why would we be in trouble? Why would our British government be in trouble if they didn't take Islam with them? So when they say take Islam with them, that means conform to everything that they want. Everything that they want, everything that they demand, our government give them it. That's what taking them with us means. To me, that's what it means, you know? Yeah, Nigel said the country becoming non-white is not his concern. Of course it's not. He's a millionaire. He's a multi-millionaire. They're all multi-millionaires. All our politicians have plenty of money in the bank. They can go anywhere in the world. They've probably got summer houses in all sorts of places. They're staying in this country when it goes shit up. They're not staying here. They're getting their kids and their families and they're getting them out of here. We've got a millionaire leaving every minute or something like that right now. Everybody's leaving England. All the YouTubers leaving England. Anybody with any money at all is out of there. They're out of there. Research it. Google it. How many millionaires are leaving Britain? A day or a minute or an hour. Just Google it. Why is all these millionaires leaving? Do you know how much taxes that we've now lost because these millionaires have left? Because they're not getting any taxes from the people that they're bringing in because they're all on social benefits. You go into these areas where they are, and you don't see anybody till fucking 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. We've tried, we've been there trying to fill them. Nobody gets out of their beds till 1 or 2 o'clock. That's a common concern. You know, you can research that as well. James, if there was a Northern Ireland constitutional party, would you vote for it? I would get all the parties, put them on a table, and make that decision then. I would need to hear what they're saying. You need to understand if they're unionists. I need to understand why they're unionists at this stage of the game. And if they're wanting to be independent, I want to know why they want to be independent, what they want out of it, what's their goals. That's what we need to know. We can't just to say, but all I want is it on the fucking table. I want us to have these options, you know. We need to have these. To be honest with you, there needs to be another party that's up against the unionists to get them to understand that you can't just clean the board every time by waving a Union Jack. People are changing their views on that. I'm seeing it on the street. I'm hearing it amongst my community, my loyalist Protestant community. they're talking, they're looking at Britain and the Union right now, and they're saying it doesn't represent us. That's not what we want, you know. So that's what they're saying on the street. I only say, I'm not going to just come up here and just start talking about my personal views, just my views. I get the strength to do this because everybody around me talking exactly what I'm saying to use. I wouldn't bring this to the platform and talk about it like this if there wasn't people out there wanting me to do it, you know. And things are changing, guys. They really are. There's so many changes in Northern Ireland and Ireland right now, and people need to pay attention to it. There's no point putting your head in the sands and pretend it's not happening. It's happening. It's happening. People are scared, and when people get scared, they'll look for every other option than what's on the table because they know what's on the table isn't working. It hasn't worked. Still not working. You know, all we're doing is creating division and hatred and all the rest of it when we should be coming together. Protestants and Catholics, you know, should be coming together and voting under the same banner, the same political party to protect our children and our lands. You know, at the end of the day, we're over all that Protestant and Catholic stuff. You know, it was just created to divide us, just like the union is. You know what I mean? It's just been created to control us. You know, we've always been a problem in Ireland because we're so strong. The fighting Irish, you know, that we've always been a big problem. And their answer was divide the land and then divide the lands and within the lands. We've got, how many peace walls have we got in Northern Ireland? In Belfast, you know, 10, 11, 12. I'm not quite up. I know there was 6 before the ceasefires, and now there's double that amount, more or less, where we've got intersections between Catholics and Protestant communities with big, massive fences and walls, you know, and the British love that. Because while we're divided and fighting each other, we're not bringing our heads together and talking about our future. You see, we're too busy fighting each other, and the government love that. They love that. So I'm going to go to the bottom again, guys. So I'm going to wrap it up. So I don't know why it says 30, only 35 minutes. Strange. We have no chance. There are millions of them, no rats. Now it's time to stand together. You know, and it is difficult being a Protestant, you know, and a unionist and a loyalist, you know, sitting here going, you know, we need to communicate with the Irish because I've been brought up to hate the Irish. I've been brought up to hate the Republic of Ireland. We've been burning tricolours on our fucking bonfires since I was a wee boy, you know, and like tricolours all around the bonfire, you know, and like we never even thought it, we never even questioned it. I've never had nobody from Southern Ireland's ever done anything bad to me, you know. I was even scared to go into Southern Ireland because I thought it was that bad and dangerous, you know. And now I find out it was all a lie. You know, they're not that bad. A lot of them don't care about all this carry on that we've been told. And they must look at us burning in tricolour and going, why you do that? You know, and of all the countries around the world that are causing us problems, we're burning the tricolour. It's crazy. Absolutely crazy. You know, it needs to stop. It really does. Like, just as human beings, just as Christians, you know what I mean? There are neighbours. We're not throwing bombs at each other. We're not fighting each other. It's not like Israel and you know and all that. We're not. Nobody's attacking each other. They're just our neighbours and they're in trouble. And because they're in trouble, we're going to be in trouble. It's common sense. It's common sense. But guys, I'm going to have to wrap it up. I think that's been close to 2 hours. I'm sorry I lost Graeme. I will sort out. I will get some sort of system. I'm not great with the doing the lives and all that with other people because I rely on the phone and whatnot. And, you know, obviously I need a better system, and it's just a bit fucking too much for me. You know what I mean? Um, you love your culture, and BG, so true. You're all Christians. You're all on the same island, and you all love your culture and all love your children. You're amazing and resilient people. But this is the thing: the only difference between Protestants and Catholics is books in the Bible. You know, we disagree in 4 or 5 books, 7 books. Don't know how many it is. And you know, we think that's Greek mythology. They say it's the Word of God, and that's where we differ. That's it. You know, and that division's been created by the Union. You know, when we look at history and we look at the famine and we look at the things that were done in the 1916 uprising, no man can sit here and say that that was right. That was right what happened to the Irish. The amount of food that was taken out of Ireland by the English, you can Google it. You can research it, guys. There's a list. How much butter, how much cream, how much beef, how much lamb, everything, fruit, vegetables was all taken out of Ireland. And that's why they had the famine, you know. Shiploads and shiploads and shiploads were taken right out of the country because they had a potato blight in England as well. It wasn't just Ireland that had the potato blight, you know. And they took corn, they took everything they would need to cook bread. They took it, you know. So the Irish have got grapes, you know, 110%. You know, this is what I keep saying about history, guys. In the past, it doesn't move. Once it's in the past, it's there. You know, as it's going on, like we see with the grooming gangs and with Tommy and everything that's happened to Tommy Robinson, it's all happening. So it's all like a wee bit, whoa, this is mental. You don't know what to believe. And people saying he's working for the Israelis, and other people saying he's not even in prison. Crazy stuff. But it's all madness and all misinformation to confuse us. But as we move forward, everything that happened to Tommy is now stuck still, and we can analyze it. Nobody can mess about with it. Nobody can give you misinformation. Nobody can play about with it or change it or do anything to it. So it's the exact same thing with Ireland in the past. You know, we've been too much blinded by hatred and this creation of conflict of Protestants and Catholics and that divide. It doesn't even make any sense to me right now, as a 56-year-old man looking back, doesn't make any sense. What was it about? You know, obviously with the IRA, we get all that. We understand all that. There's going to be militants in any situation. But you know, what I'm trying to say, guys, is as we go forward even further, when we're not here and our kids go forward, what we're going through right now will be stuck in the past. They'll be able to analyze it and look at it properly and see it for how it is, and they will see the politicians and the damage that they've done to the people. You know, this is what I'm saying. These men that are doing these things to our country or that not doing anything to stop it will be seen as we go forward in the past. So their children and their family, their names will always be known and be part of destroying our country because they never done nothing about it while they were in power. And that's what they've got to live with. That's what their families going forward in the next 100 years are going to have to live with, because it's not going to go away for hundreds and hundreds of years. It's always going to be sitting there. What the politicians did to protect us at this time. So it's not going to go away ever. It'll go down in history. And you'll be along with the list of traitors that let the government down, let the people down in England, Wales, and Scotland. You know, 110%. So it's up to you what side of history you want to be on, you know, because there's only one way this is going to go. There's only, at the end of the day, you're either going to let our country be destroyed, or you're going to put your foot down, you're going to bang the table, and you're going to say, enough is enough. We're stopping this. We're going to protect our citizens in Northern Ireland, in Ulster. That's what you need to do. It's the only thing you need to do. And you need to do it quick. You need to do it quick. You know, you aren't puppets. Or are you puppets of Westminster? Are they pulling your strings? Or are you the real men of Ulster? Are you the real politicians here to protect us and my children, all our kids going forward? You need to start thinking about who you really are, and who you are working for. Are you working for us, or are you working for the mainland government? Because if you're working for the mainland government, that is a traitorous government. That's who you're working for. You're part of that traitorous government. You're destroying what you call the Union. Your Great Britain. They are destroying it, and you're supporting it. Thanks so much, guys. Yes, was out last night. You know, great. Everything was absolutely brilliant. I was a wee bit thingy about it at the start, you know, because it's been a long time, but a couple of years since I've had a drink. You know what I mean? And obviously, I've had a wee beer here and there. You know what I mean? A wee Guinness and all that, but not go out and have a drink properly, like, you know what I mean? So, yeah, everything went really well. Body handled it no problem. Best behaviour. Still had the Freedom Dad head on, and yeah. But I was going to say, I had somebody recognised me. Really did. I don't know how, because I don't look like this when I go out. You know what I mean? And we were in a restaurant bar sort of thing, and I was in having a chat and all that, and just socialising, and there was a few people outside smoking. Some of my friends and family, so what I call family. Um, and there was a guy going on about me, you know what I mean, and the banger demo and all the rest of it, you know what I mean. So yeah, that was nobody told me. I never found out till we came back to the house, you know, and they were like telling me, and I was like, "Why didn't you tell me? I would have a chat with him," you know what I mean. And they were, because I was drinking, they just didn't want this in case, you know what I mean. And fair play to them, you know what I mean. Fair play to him. But yeah, I don't know how I got recognised. I think it was my laugh. I think it's my laugh because I've got a quite a hangy laugh, so I do. And yeah, I think it's from the videos rather than he's seen me my videos or he's watching my videos and he spotted me and he had plenty to say to everybody else but nothing to say to me. And that's normally the case. Because I always say to people, come up and speak to me. If you've got a problem, if you think I'm doing something wrong, if you don't agree with something, come up and speak to me. Come up and speak to me and I'll explain it to you. And because you probably got it all wrong. You probably think, oh, he just hates all immigrants, he hates all foreigners. Not like that. Not like that. We've had foreigners coming into our country for many years and there's never been a problem, you know. I don't want foreigners coming over here to do the jobs that we don't want to do because they're not paying us the right money. And I don't want foreigners coming over here to be doctors, nurses, and engineers because they're taking them from the most vulnerable countries in the world, bring them here because our doctors and nurses don't want to stay here because they're not paying enough money. You understand? Our doctors and nurses and our engineers are going to other countries to work in better conditions with a lot more pay. And the answer to that from our government is to bring foreigners in to do the jobs. Rather than pay our people the right money that they deserve for these kind of jobs, they let our people leave and they bring in foreigners. And that's wrong. That's wrong. Because the main thing about that is what's happening to these countries where they're taking all these engineers and doctors and nurses from. How are they faring right now when we've got all their best? It's not right. It's not right. You're not going to tell me that that's acceptable. That's your reason for a mass immigration. No, that's not acceptable. That's your excuse, and it's not. It's not working. It's not working. We're not stupid. So with that, guys, thank you so much for all the love and comments and the support. And I know it's been a bit of a tricky one, a bit of a hard one. You know what I mean? It's a lot to take in. And like I say, I'm still learning it, and all I'm doing is trying to understand everything. I'm not because I'm not the brightest. You know what I mean? I've never studied politics or anything like that. I did do sociology in prison, but like social policies and also I have an understanding of how things work. But as far as the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Magna Carta, it is quite overwhelming. It's quite hard to understand. But the thing is, it's there. It's law. It's our rights that have been given down many, many years, and we can act on them rights. You've just got to be aware of them. So if you put in the Bill of Rights, 1688, the Bill of Rights, and the Constitution. It's the English Constitution, but it covers us. And we can use it to cover Ireland. And Ireland, they're looking. I've spoke to people in Ireland today, and they're looking at something like that in Ireland that could help us as well. So we're coming at them from both sides. I think that's the way forward. We should be fighting against what's happening. We should be fighting against this Labour Party and the next party that comes in, which will be Reform, because nobody's changing anything that's happening. It's going to get worse and worse and worse. So with that, guys, thank you so much. I'm sorry I haven't been reading as many comments out. It's quite a hangy topic. I'll be honest with you. It is quite I would say dangerous, you know what I mean? It could be, you know what I mean? Somebody might want me to shut up. Some unionist who doesn't care about what damage happens or what the future holds for Northern Ireland. As long as they're part of the union, as long as they're on this planet, they'll fight tooth and comb. They don't care what the union looks like. It's just because of the rhetoric of the Union Jack and all the rest of it. So it is a really difficult topic for me to cover. And like I say, I'm only doing my platform justice by looking at everything. And I will look at everything. If anybody's got any other ideas, we'll bring that to the table as well. You know what I mean? But I think for Ulster men and women, and for Protestants, I think it's the safest way forward for us, our culture, and our traditions. And I think if we don't, we're going to lose everything. We will lose everything eventually. We will lose our 12th of July, our 11th, and all the rest. Catholics, they'll lose all their things as well. It will come, you know. And I just want to like try and prevent it. And like if we can do something now that can help our children in 100 years' time, then why not take that opportunity? Who wouldn't? Who would not want to lay down the foundations for an amazing country, a strong country, built by the people of the country, the laws made by the people of the country, referendums had by all the people of the country, you know? And whatever road that takes us down, it's still by the people. And if we come together with Protestants and Catholics and we break down these divisions, we would be so strong. Because at the minute, people would be going, well, we can't have referendums because you've got Catholics, you've got Protestants, and we're all going to disagree. And the Catholics could use it for something against us, and the Protestants could use it against something like that, depending on how many each religion has, if it came down to that. So we have to get rid of that. We have to get rid of the Protestant Catholic thing. We have to be Christians. We need to vote as Christians. It's as simple as that. I can't emphasize it enough. There's no difference between Protestants and Catholics in the eyes of Islam. There is no difference. None whatsoever. We are Christians. We are kafar. Okay, we are not worthy. The extremism of Islam tells us it over and over again. And again, not all Muslims are like that. But the problem that we have is that they're not prepared to stand up against the extremism of Islam in England. Just like the Catholics couldn't stand up against the IRA, and just like the Protestants couldn't stand up against the UVF or the UDA, the Red Hand Commandos, or the LVF. Once extremism is in a community, it doesn't need to be massive, it does need to be extreme. And that will scare the locals. Nobody will stand up against that. Nobody wants to be ostracized or looked at in a way where they're going against the common thing or the common goal, So that's the problem. And I think everybody on the street, most people I speak to now, are saying to me, like, we don't want this division anymore. And it's coming down. I think it's gonna, it feels like to me that the last people that are going to get on board with this is our politicians. This is what it feels like, because the more I walk about, the more people I speak to in my areas, and I talk about this, who have the understanding of what's going on in England and what's coming, they all agree that we need to make some mighty big changes. And like I say, I don't understand why our government in Northern Ireland, aren't talking about things that we're wanting talked about. Everybody, if you go into these guys go into any area, just because not everybody's coming out on the street, not everybody's coming out on the street because they're scared because everybody calls us far right and racist. Oh, you're just far right and racist if you want to protect your children. You're just far right and racist if you don't want Islam coming into your country and you don't want your churches being turned into mosques. So that's why people aren't coming out on the street. But very shortly, people are going to get fed up with that. Slowly but surely, we're breaking down the far right racist labels. Slowly but surely, bosses, people that work for people, they're going to realize that, no, you aren't far right and racist. I understand why you're going in on the streets. No, you won't get sacked. No, I won't look at you wrongly. You want to fight for your country and fight for your children. You do that. And that's where we will head to. And more people will come out on the streets. And maybe then you'll listen to this. Maybe then, because right now people are scared. That's all it is. They're just scared to put their face out there. But if you go online, you read the comments, you look at all the social medias, all the TikToks, and the people are all saying the same thing. In the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland, Protestants and Catholics are all saying the same thing. So I'm not going to go on and on, guys. What I'm up to. You know what I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to create division. I'm just wanting people to understand that we need to do something different and maybe a wee bit extreme to fix what's coming. That's it. So, James Carl, thank you. John, all my other moderators, thanks for staying on top of things. I don't know how much, if there's been much hate tonight. I imagine there probably is a wee bit, like, people can't understand where we're coming from because they don't know what's going on around them. They're just watching EastEnders and BBC News and Sky News and Netflix and Prime. And that's it. They go to work, they come back, scrape and they get by. They're no online. They don't have a clue. Some people don't even know about the grooming gangs till this day. They don't know. They only know the wee bits and pieces that are coming out on mainstream media. They don't understand what's actually happened to these girls. How brutal it was. So, yeah, when you have the knowledge of the brutality of what these men can do to children, then that's when you realize something needs to change. And I ask all the politicians in Northern Ireland, please read the transcripts. Read the transcripts from the grooming gangs, from the court cases. We've only got 2 because they won't release the rest. But the 2 we've got are horrific enough to make you understand that this is not the religion of peace. This is not how any of our men have ever behaved. This is something different. And it's coming to our country more and more rapidly. And before we know it, there's nothing we're going to be able to do about it. John Capone, not me, John Rankin. I'm not deluded, man. I'm very list. It's been all good. I've not seen anyone. Time out. Thank you, John. So thanks, guys. I'm going to wrap it up. I'm going to get a wee cup of tea, maybe something to eat. So early night, I think. Got some things on the mar. We've got a lot of things on the mar. I need to sort of prioritize things right now. There's a lot of things I want to do, and then there's things I have to do. You know what I mean? So I'd rather be doing the stuff I like to do, like going around bonfires and interviewing boys. There's a couple of bonfires I want to bring these that are just amazing. They're amazing. You know what I mean? I want to capture some of the bonfires getting topped. And so what we call getting topped is whenever it's getting built and it's done, and then they put the top bit on. I want to capture some of them, so I do. Um, yeah. There's some big bonfires this year, so there's big bonfires. You know, I think Cooley have went over 106. I think they're about 180, 190 layers, and the last I heard, Craigie Hill was had 136, 140. So yeah, and Ravenhill's quite big. Porterdown's doing well. Yeah, there's a few big ones out there, guys. So yeah, it's going to be close to see who's got the biggest this year. You know, I'm not a betting man. You know what I mean? So I am a betting man, but I'm not betting on this. I'm not betting on this. You know what I mean? But fingers crossed, we'll get it. You know what I mean? So we'll see. But yeah, you like I say, I'm trying to getting excited for the 11th and 12th. You know what I mean? It's not explaining what it feels like. If we use it, it'll be like Christmas. You know what I mean? So this is better than Christmas for us. You know what I mean? It always has been. You know what I mean? 11th and 12th has always been a lot bigger build up because of the bonfires getting built and all that. You know what I mean? You know, it's just a Christmas tree goes up at Christmas. You know what I mean? And before you know it, it's gone. With the bonfires, it's a wee bit more drawn out. Then we got the bonfires. Then we got the 12th of July. We got the mini 12th coming up as well. So yeah, there's loads going on, and it's a big thing. It's a big part. You know, May, June, July. You know what I mean? August. You know what I mean? It's huge. It's huge for us, and yeah, I hope it's something I never want to see be gone. You know, being part. I was an Orange man when I was like 7 years old in the juniors. You know what I mean? In Sandy Row, that's when I joined the Orange Men. Got my first sash, and yeah, it's something that we'll always be able to hang on to. You know what I mean? Because 1690, King Billy, King James, King Louis, and the Pope and all that. You know, it's a long time ago, and as we know, it was the Pope that funded King Billy. You know, so because like King Louis and King James were plotting against him, and as you know, I brought to the platform that the Pope rejoiced when King Billy won the Battle of Boyne. You know, that's a hard one for people to get their heads around because of the rhetoric of Catholics and Protestants, and singing "No Pope in Rome" and all that carry on, and it's all been a wee bit confusing. You know what I mean? And we're starting to understand it all now. We're understanding the madness of what's happened to us in the last 40, 50, 60 years. You know what I mean? Since 1970, 1969. You know what I mean? So you got to understand Protestants and Catholics lived together before the 70s. A lot of people think the troubles have been going on for hundreds of years. It hasn't. It hasn't. Protestants and Catholics lived in the same areas before the 70s. Okay, and then all of a sudden, we were divided. I don't know what else to say about that, guys. You know what I mean? I could go into it as well about the official IRA, and how they wanted unity and all that. And, how the provisional IRA took them all out for their agenda. There's lots and lots at play, and Marxism, communism, socialism. It's nuts, and it's a lot to take in. It is a lot to take in for us guys in working class areas, but I implore you to try and research and look at things and understand socialism and understand the Sinn Féin and the direction that they're going in and stuff like that. And understand where it's happened before in the past in other countries and what the result has been. It's not good. It's not good. And like I say, it's just money in it. It's just money, money, money. Money talks. People are bought. People are compromised. People, the government have got stuff on people, and anybody that doesn't is still going to go down that road of letting our children and letting these men come into our country are obviously compromised. There's no two ways about it. That's the kicker of it all. You know, they can say whatever they want, but we know if you're going to sit there and let this happen to us, then you're compromised. You may, when you say your hands are tied, your hands are fucking tied because of something that you've either done, or whatever money you've taken, or something illegal that you've done that they know about, or whatever. You know, I would suggest you stop saying that your hands are tied because it does sound like you're compromised. That's just my personal fucking thing. You know what I mean? But yes, guys, thank you so much. So much love as always, and obviously I'll be back tomorrow. Don't know what I'll be doing tomorrow. It'll be a surprise. It'll be a wee surprise, okay? Because I haven't got a clue. I don't know. I need to check my messages, check where I'm going to be, who's wanting to see me, and obviously I want to do some with content, so I'm bringing something to the platform. So I've got to mix, you know, what I'm trying to do and learn from other people and get around my communities, and also bring content for you that's interesting, you know, because it is, you know, it's a content. I'm here to entertain as well as talk about the hard facts and stuff like that. You know what I mean? I'm here to try and bring some sort of something good. You know what I mean? Something interesting to the platform, and it's really hard. It is really hard, but you know, things will change. I am confident things will change. You know, something has to give. You know, so listen, guys, love you all so much. Definitely going now. It's freedom dad. It's Monday morning, lad. Monday, yes, Monday tomorrow. Yes, mate. I'm filling a flask tomorrow night. Right, guys, I'm gonna go. All my love, and as always, God bless every single one of you.